Hi, my name is Karen Fabian and I'm the founder of Bare Bones Yoga, and I want to welcome you to video number 7 in my free online training called the Bare Bones Yoga Learn Anatomy Challenge. I'm going to get right into it today. Some of my earlier videos I give you a little preview of what the Learn Anatomy Challenge is all about. But if you've been following along, you know that this is a free training that dives into some of the details about anatomy, which can be super helpful and important for yoga teachers to know. I'm also going to include in the description the downloadable PDF that you can access, which will give you access to all the videos in this series, as well as information about the offers that are part of this entire program to really round out your learning experience. So today we're going to be talking about red flags to look for when teaching. And I want to just preface this by saying these are general red flags. It doesn't mean that if you see something like I'm going to explain happening in somebody, it definitely means there's going to be a problem or they're going to experience a problem in their body. But it is something to look for. You know, everybody's body is different, and so these red flags are meant to be things to look for and maybe teach to in terms of adjusting people or giving them other options. But if somebody doesn't shift their body in a particular way that you're suggesting, it doesn't mean that you need to go over to them and force them into what you're suggesting. Just let them be, unless it's something that's super obvious that it's going to be detrimental to their health. I do remember I had one instance in 15 years of teaching when someone tried to do a back bend wheel without their hands. And I'm not quite sure why they did that, but they tucked their head back and they were just rolling around on their cervical spine. That was probably the only time I went up to that person and I said, no, please come out of that. If they were going to do that, I certainly didn't want them to be doing it in my class. But in general, these things are things to just look for. So to reference the red flags, I'm going to pull out the Bare Bones Yoga Guide to Anatomy. And this is an anatomy guide that you can get right on my website. So the first one we're going to take a look at is moving the knee beyond the ankle in different kinds of lunges. So this looks something like this. I actually saw this last night in class, somebody whose knee was way beyond the heel. And so generally, when we're talking about building healthy alignment in any kind of lunge, whether it's a standing crescent lunge, a warrior lunge, a low lunge, we're trying to create stability, right? So even though in a pose like Warrior One, we're lengthening the hip flexor, for instance, back on this back leg, we want to still be stable because it's really hard to lengthen a muscle if there's no stability in the pose. Then we're just kind of floundering around. So the general concern when the knee goes way past the heel is you can see how the whole pose kind of takes on kind of an ultra flexible shape rather than one that's super steady. If I were to bring the feet closer together, I would get really steady. If I bring the feet further apart, I start to get that increased stretchiness to it. And then when I bring the knee way past the heel, it really can start to give me that feeling of sinking into my hips. So just generally, without getting into a lot of anatomy, stacking the knee over the heel is just a lot more steady. But the other concern is that because all the heads of the quadriceps insert on the knee, that there's some concern that that increased pressure on the knee is not so great for the knee. You know, all of that movement forward of the knee, putting some pressure on the patellar tendon as it kind of tucks into the patella itself, that's sometimes where the concern comes from. Again, it's not something that everybody's going to experience, but as a general rule, we want people to feel steadiness in their pose, and so it's helpful to keep that front knee centered over the ankle. The other thing that we see in some students when we're teaching is this hyperextension of the knee. And we'll see this many times in balancing postures where obviously they're standing on one leg. And so this is the kind of thing where you can kind of notice in this leg here, I can lock my knee out. So I can straighten my leg to the point where now, if I balance on one leg, I'm really using my joint to balance versus using the muscular support that I can get even if I slightly bend my leg and therefore contract my hamstring a little bit. So if you see folks coming into, let's say, a posture like tree, and you notice a lot of students really squeezing their thighs so much. And you might see from the side even their leg go kind of beyond straight. Encourage them to slightly bend. So this is what we often hear in class as taught as the micro bend. And so when we bend the knee slightly, well, what's responsible for bending or flexing the knee is the hamstring. So we're bringing some contractibility to the back of the leg, to the hamstrings, to bring a little more muscular support to the joint, rather than leveraging the joint for the support we need when we're standing on one leg. So that's just something to kind of eyeball as people are doing different balancing postures. Another one to take a look at, and this one's kind of common. I don't see this as much anymore, but it is something that I still do see every once in a while. And this is moving from high to low push-up and letting the shoulders dip way below the elbows. So it'll look something like this. Coming down from plank to low push-up and letting the elbows or the shoulders drop lower than the elbows. And so the concern there is, if you think about all the soft tissue around the shoulder itself, and by soft tissue I mean muscle and fascia, and even though the rotator cuff muscles provide that stability cuff around the shoulder joint itself, we still have the head of the humerus pressing into, to some extent, all that soft tissue, all those soft tissue components, along with the ligaments and tendons around the joint itself. And so the concern is, as we move from high to low push-up, where the lower we go, using this part of the arm to press up against that soft tissue, and then because the movement is really dynamic, we can get quite a bit of pressure, of push, of force against that soft tissue with the bone. And so that's why you may be familiar with hearing this in class, this idea of only lowering halfway or even just a little bit. And you can see how there's much less force or push or dynamic force, shearing force of the humerus into that soft tissue if we don't kind of take it so low. So these are just 3 areas. There are other ones that I detail in the anatomy manual, but these are just 3 areas that I wanted to just throw out to you. If you're a teacher and you're looking for different ways to bring into your cueing, just some general, I don't want to say warnings, but thoughts for students, especially if you see it happening. If you do notice, let's say in this case, a number of students dipping really low and moving from high to low push-up, that might be a perfect opportunity to stop the class for 2 or 3 minutes, demonstrate yourself what you'd like to see, and then bring them back into down dog and take them through a couple high to low push-up movements to see if people can kind of get it after hearing you and seeing you demonstrate. So just to wrap up, we've got these red flags to look for when teaching. I want to also just remind you that all this information is in the Bare Bones Yoga Anatomy Manual, which you can get on the website. I'm going to include the link to the downloadable PDF guide that goes with this entire Learn Anatomy Challenge in the description here. So you can download the PDF. It'll give you information about how to get the manual. And also, for participating in the challenge, you can contact me to set up a free coaching session, and we can talk about any questions you have about anatomy. So I want to thank you so much for taking some time to watch this video number 7. There are 2 more videos left in this series. I hope you're enjoying it. Please comment below and let me know what you think. Thank you so much for watching, and namaste.